My name is Madeline, and I'm 29 years old. I never imagined my wedding day would include my mother-in-law, Barbara, bursting into the ceremony jewelry box in hand, publicly accusing me of theft. The room fell silent as she pointed at me in my white dress, her face twisted with rage. Strangely, I felt ready for this moment. It was the culmination of years of tension, and what happened next would change everything, just not in the way anyone expected. If you're watching this, drop a comment, letting me know where you're from, hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever dealt with difficult in-laws. Now let me tell you what happened when I finally stood my ground. I grew up in a small apartment in Columbus, Ohio, raised by my single mother, who worked 2 jobs to keep a roof over our heads. We never had much, but she taught me the value of hard work and integrity. Following her example, I worked my way through college as a waitress, pursuing a degree in psychology. I dreamed of becoming a therapist one day, helping people navigate their emotional challenges. The irony of that career choice isn't lost on me now. I met Ryan when I was 26, working an alumni fundraising event at the university. I was serving drinks, and he was one of the successful graduates being honored that night. At 32, Ryan had already made a name for himself in architectural design, known for innovative, sustainable buildings. He was tall with warm hazel eyes and an infectious laugh that made everyone around him smile. When he approached the bar, he didn't just order and walk away like most guests. Instead, he asked about my studies and actually listened to my answers. There was no condescension in his voice, no impatience to move on to more important conversations. By the end of the night, he'd asked for my number and I'd given it, despite my rule about not dating customers. Our first date was at a small Italian restaurant where the owner knew Ryan by name. He ordered in perfect Italian and encouraged me to try dishes I'd never heard of. I was intimidated at first. My culinary experiences had never extended much beyond chain restaurants. But Ryan made me feel comfortable explaining each dish with enthusiasm rather than pretension. It wasn't until our third date that I learned about his background. His father, Dr. Montgomery, was a prominent cardiovascular surgeon whose techniques were taught in medical schools. His mother, Barbara, came from old money and was a fixture in Philadelphia's social scene, chairing charity galas and sitting on museum boards. Ryan had grown up in a world of privilege I could barely comprehend. "Does it bother you?" he asked when he told me, searching my face for signs of discomfort. "Only if it bothers you that I grew up eating macaroni and cheese 3 nights a week," I replied. He laughed and kissed me. "I like macaroni and cheese." Our relationship progressed quickly after that. Ryan's world was so different from mine. Private clubs, black tie events, weekend trips to Martha's Vineyard, but he never made me feel like I didn't belong. When I felt overwhelmed, he'd squeeze my hand and whisper jokes about the stuffiness around us. We were a team navigating his world together. Meeting his parents was inevitable, though I dreaded it. Ryan arranged a dinner at an upscale restaurant where a salad cost more than what I used to spend on groceries for a week. I wore a borrowed dress and practiced proper table etiquette the night before, terrified of using the wrong fork. Dr. Montgomery was surprisingly warm, asking thoughtful questions about my studies and career goals. Barbara, however, assessed me like a specimen under a microscope. Her smile never reached her eyes, which remained cold and calculating. "Psychology, how interesting," she said, her tone suggesting the opposite. "And where did you say your family is from?" "Ohio originally," I answered. "Oh, I don't think I know anyone from Ohio," she replied, as if this confirmed some suspicion. Throughout dinner, Barbara peppered the conversation with references designed to highlight our different backgrounds. She mentioned mutual friends with European titles, reminisced about Ryan's childhood summers in the Hamptons, and asked if I'd ever been to the opera, her eyebrows raising when I admitted I hadn't. Ryan noticed, of course. He would redirect the conversation, highlight my accomplishments, or sometimes directly say, "Mum, that's enough." But he always followed these moments with an apologetic smile to her, as if her behaviour was merely a social faux pas rather than deliberate exclusion. After dinner, as we drove home, I asked Ryan about his mother's coldness. "She's just protective," he sighed. "And she can be a bit of a snob, I know. She'll warm up once she gets to know you." But she didn't. Over the next 2 years of dating, Barbara's thinly veiled disapproval remained constant. She would forget to include me in family event invitations, introduce me as Ryan's friend at social gatherings, and occasionally make comments about Ryan's ex-girlfriend Alessandra, whose family apparently owned vineyards in Tuscany. Despite Barbara's disapproval, Ryan proposed on our 2nd anniversary. He took me back to the Italian restaurant where we'd had our first date and got down on one knee with a vintage emerald ring that had belonged to his grandmother. "You make me happier than I've ever been," he said, his voice trembling slightly. "Will you marry me?" I said yes through tears of joy, truly believing that our love could overcome any obstacle, even a disapproving mother-in-law. The next day, we went to his parents' house to share the news. Dr. Montgomery shook Ryan's hand firmly and kissed my cheek, offering sincere congratulations. Barbara's reaction was a masterclass in false enthusiasm. She smiled brightly, hugged me stiffly, and immediately began talking about wedding venues. The Philadelphia Country Club would be perfect, of course, she said, not bothering to ask if we had any preferences. "We'll need to book it right away. Spring weddings there are in such demand." As Ryan and his father discussed something in the other room, Barbara leaned in close to me. "That ring," she said, eyeing my engagement ring, "was meant for a Montgomery bride. I hope you understand what that means." Her words sent a chill through me. It wasn't just a comment about a piece of jewelry. It was a statement about belonging, about legacy, about whether I was worthy of her son. In that moment, I should have recognized the warning signs of what was to come. The wedding planning began almost immediately, with Barbara taking control before I could even catch my breath. "It's what mothers do," she explained when I gently suggested I might want to make some decisions. "You focus on being a bride. I'll handle the details." At first I tried to be accommodating. When she insisted on the Philadelphia Country Club instead of the botanical gardens Ryan and I had discussed, I agreed. When she vetoed my color scheme of sage green and gold in favor of traditional blue and silver, Montgomery colors, she explained, I conceded. When she added 50 names to our guest list, people neither Ryan nor I knew personally, I bit my tongue. "They're important connections for your father," she told Ryan when he questioned it. "It would be a significant slight not to include them." My own mother Linda tried to participate in the planning offering to help with the flowers or the favors, but Barbara politely steamrolled her at every turn. "Oh, how thoughtful," she would say with a dismissive smile. "But we've already arranged for Celine at Bouquet Royale to handle the florals. They've done all the Montgomery events for decades." I watched my mother retreat into the background, her excitement about her only daughter's wedding dimming with each rejection. When I called to apologize after a particularly difficult planning meeting, she tried to sound upbeat. "It's okay, sweetheart. I know how these society families can be. I just want you to be happy." But I wasn't happy. The wedding was transforming into something I didn't recognize, formal, stuffy, and impersonal. The guest list was now predominantly Ryan's family friends and business associates. The menu featured foods I could barely pronounce. The ceremony script had been revised to remove any overly emotional elements I had wanted to include. Ryan was caught in the middle trying to please both me and his mother. When I expressed my frustrations, he would listen sympathetically and promise to talk to Barbara, but these conversations never seemed to change anything. "She's just excited," he would say. "This is her only son's wedding. It's our wedding," I would counter. "Shouldn't it reflect who we are as a couple?" The breaking point came 3 months before the wedding date. I had made an appointment at a local bridal boutique to try on dresses with my mother and my 2 best friends from college. The day before, I received a call from Barbara. "I've cancelled your appointment at that little shop, Bess," she informed me. "I've scheduled a private showing at Elisa's instead. It's where all the Montgomery brides have found their dresses." Elisa's was the most exclusive bridal salon in Philadelphia, where dresses started at 5 figures. I was stunned by her presumption. "Barbara, I already had plans with my mom and friends," I said, trying to keep my voice level. "They can come to Elisa's," she replied dismissively, "though the salon is quite intimate. Perhaps just your mother this time." When I arrived at Elisa's the next day, Barbara was already there, with her friend Margot, who apparently was a fashion expert. My mother sat awkwardly on a velvet settee, looking out of place in her department store dress among the champagne flutes and French furniture. The dresses Barbara had pre-selected were all variations on the same theme, heavily traditional ball gowns with long trains and conservative necklines. They were objectively beautiful, but completely wrong for me. I had envisioned something simpler, more romantic, perhaps a sheath dress with delicate lace. After trying on the 5th, nearly identical ball gown, I emerged from the dressing room feeling like I was wearing a costume. Barbara and Margot cooed appreciatively. "That's the one," Barbara declared. "You look like a proper Montgomery bride." I caught my mother's eye in the mirror. She gave me a small, sad smile that said she understood this wasn't what I wanted. Something inside me finally snapped. "No," I said firmly. Barbara looked up, startled. "No what, dear?" "No, this isn't my dress. None of these are my dress. They're beautiful, but they're not me. Barbara's smile tightened. You're just nervous. Every bride gets cold feet about the dress. It's not cold feet. It's that I haven't been allowed to make a single meaningful decision about my own wedding. The venue isn't what I wanted. The flowers aren't what I wanted. The guest list includes 50 people I've never met. But the dress... I took a deep breath. The dress has to be my choice. A heavy silence fell over the salon. The attendants discreetly backed away. My mother sat up straighter, a glimmer of pride in her eyes, despite her obvious discomfort. I see, Barbara said finally, her voice glacial. Perhaps you should select whatever you feel is appropriate. I did. I made another appointment at the original boutique and found a dress I loved, a sleek off-shoulder design with vintage lace and a modest train. It was elegant, but comfortable classic, but with personality. When I showed a picture to Ryan, his face lit up. That's so you, T, he said warmly. You're going to be the most beautiful bride. But the dress victory came at a cost. Barbara's demeanour shifted from controlling to cold. She continued to plan the wedding, but now with minimal input from me, acting as if my rejection of her dress selection had been a personal affront. She would make passive-aggressive comments during planning meetings. Well, we know Madeline prefers to make unusual choices. Or, I suppose traditional elegance isn't for everyone. Worse, she began spreading subtle rumours among their social circle. Ryan's cousin mentioned that Barbara had described me as difficult and unappreciative to several family friends. At a pre-wedding dinner, I overheard her telling one of her friends that it was challenging to welcome someone with such different standards into the family. When I told Ryan about these comments, he seemed torn. Mum can be petty when she feels rejected, he admitted. But the wedding is just one day. Once it's over, things will get better. Can you just try to go with it a little more? For me, his plea made me feel guilty as if I was the one creating problems. So I retreated, letting Barbara take control of the remaining decisions, speaking up only when absolutely necessary. The wedding continued to take shape. Barbara's vision of a proper Montgomery celebration, with just a few concessions to what Ryan and I had wanted. I told myself it would be worth it. That once we were married, Barbara's influence would wane. That Ryan and I could build our life together on our own terms. I had no idea that Barbara was planning a wedding day spectacle that would test not just my patience, but the very foundation of my relationship with Ryan. 2 months before the wedding, Barbara invited me to a special bridal tea at the Montgomery family home. It was the first conciliatory gesture she had made since the dress incident, and I accepted cautiously, hoping it might be a turning point in our relationship. The tea was elaborate, with tiny sandwiches and pastries arranged on silver platters. Barbara was playing the perfect hostess, showing me family photos and sharing stories about Ryan's childhood. For a brief moment, I allowed myself to hope that perhaps she was finally accepting me. There's something I want to show you, she said after we'd finished our tea. She led me to the master bedroom suite, to a large walk-in closet that had been converted into something resembling a bank vault with a heavy door and security panel. This is where we keep the family treasures, she explained, entering a code. The door swung open to reveal shelves of jewelry boxes, silver items, and what looked like valuable documents. Barbara selected a blue velvet box from a central shelf. The Montgomery Sapphire, she announced, opening the box with reverence. Inside was the most beautiful necklace I had ever seen, a large oval sapphire surrounded by diamonds, hanging from a delicate platinum chain. The stones caught the light, sending blue and white reflections dancing across the walls. It's stunning, I breathed. It's been in the Montgomery family for 4 generations, Barbara said. Every Montgomery bride has worn it on her wedding day since 1920. She lifted it from the box. Would you like to try it on? The question felt like a test. I nodded, turning so she could fasten it around my neck. The necklace was surprisingly heavy, the sapphire cool against my skin. I looked in the mirror and saw Barbara watching me intently, her expression unreadable. It looks lovely on you, she said, though her tone suggested she was making a concession rather than giving a compliment. Thank you for showing me, I said sincerely. It's an honour to be part of such a beautiful tradition. Barbara carefully returned the necklace to its box. It's worth over $200,000, she mentioned casually. The insurance appraisal was done just last year. I'll be very careful with it, I promised. She snapped the box shut. I'm sure you will. The Montgomery women have always protected what belongs to the family. Something in her emphasis made me uneasy, but I dismissed it as my own insecurity. Surely even Barbara wouldn't imply I might steal a family heirloom. 2 weeks before the wedding, the Montgomerys hosted a rehearsal dinner at their home. Everything was going smoothly, or as smoothly as possible, given the underlying tension, until Barbara clinked her glass for attention during dessert. "I have a rather distressing announcement," she said, her voice carrying across the dining room. "The Montgomery sapphire appears to be missing from its safe location." A murmur ran through the guests. Ryan's father looked up sharply. "Barbara, is this really the time?" she continued, as if he hadn't spoken. "I last saw it 2 weeks ago when I was showing it to Madeline. I returned it to the vault, of course, but when I went to check on it yesterday to have it cleaned for the wedding, the box was empty." All eyes turned to me. I felt a cold wave of shock wash over me. "Are you suggesting that I took it?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Barbara arranged her features into a look of distress. "I'm not suggesting anything, dear. I'm simply stating the facts. The necklace is missing, and you are the last person besides me to see it." Ryan put his hand over mine. "Mum, stop. Madeline would never take anything." "Of course not," Barbara agreed quickly. "I'm sure there's an explanation. Perhaps it was misplaced during cleaning. But the damage was done." I could see the doubt in the eyes of Ryan's relatives, the whispered conversations behind hands. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of humiliation and anger. Ryan's father suggested filing a police report, which Barbara quickly rejected. "Let's not involve the authorities just yet," she said. "I'm sure it will turn up." On the drive home, I finally broke down. "Ryan, your mother just accused me of stealing in front of your entire family." "She didn't actually accuse you," Ryan said, though he didn't sound convinced. "She's just upset about the necklace. She made sure everyone knew I was the last one to see it." "How is that not an accusation?" Ryan ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I knew meant he was stressed. "Let's not jump to conclusions. The necklace will turn up and then this will all blow over." But the next morning, Barbara called me directly. "Madeline," she said, her voice honey-sweet. "I've been thinking about our situation. If you were to return the necklace now, we could forget this unfortunate incident. No questions asked." I was speechless with shock. "I didn't take the necklace, Barbara." "Of course you say that," she replied. "But we both know the truth, don't we? A girl from your background suddenly having access to something so valuable. It must have been tempting." "I would never steal from Ryan's family," I insisted, tears of frustration forming. "I don't know what happened to your necklace, but I had nothing to do with it." "Well," she sighed, "you have until the wedding to reconsider your position. After that, things might become more complicated." When I told Ryan about the call, he looked troubled. "Why would she say those things if she didn't have reason to suspect you?" His question hit me like a slap. "You can't seriously think I would steal from your family." "No, of course not," he backpedaled. "But Mom seems so certain. Maybe the necklace got mixed up with your things somehow. Could you just check to be sure?" In that moment, I realized that a seed of doubt had been planted in Ryan's mind. Despite his love for me, despite our years together, his mother's accusation had found fertile ground. It was a devastating realization. That night, unable to sleep, I began researching Barbara Montgomery online. News articles, society pages, charity event photos, I combed through everything I could find. And then, buried in a community forum post from years ago, I found a comment that made my blood run cold. It was from a woman named Rachel Peters, describing how Barbara Montgomery had accused her of stealing earrings after she had dated Ryan in college. According to Rachel, the earrings had mysteriously reappeared after she and Ryan broke up. Further searching revealed similar stories. A woman named Diane who had allegedly taken cufflinks. Another named Jennifer, who had supposedly pocketed a silver letter opener. Each woman had dated Ryan, each had been accused of theft by Barbara, and each relationship had subsequently ended. It was a pattern, a deliberate, calculated pattern designed to drive away women Barbara deemed unworthy of her son. And now I was the latest target. But unlike those other women, I had no intention of being driven away. I loved Ryan, and I was going to fight for our relationship. I contacted Rachel Peters, who confirmed her story and expressed sympathy for my situation. "Barbara Montgomery destroyed my relationship and my reputation in one move," she told me. "Don't let her do the same to you." With Rachel's encouragement, I made a decision that would change everything. I hired a private investigator to follow Barbara. It was an extreme step, but I was desperate to clear my name and expose the truth before it was too late. 3 days before the wedding, the PI delivered. He had photos of Barbara entering a bank, signing for access to a safe deposit box, and placing a blue velvet jewelry box inside. The timestamp showed this happened the day before she had announced the necklace missing. Armed with this evidence, I had a choice to make. I could confront Barbara privately, show the photos to Ryan, or wait. After careful consideration, I decided to wait. Barbara had chosen to accuse me publicly. Perhaps it was time for her to be exposed in the same way. I tucked the photos into an envelope and prepared for whatever my wedding day would bring. My wedding day dawned clear and bright. Despite the drama surrounding the necklace, I felt a strange sense of calm as my bridesmaids helped me into my dress. My mother fussed with my veiled tears in her eyes. "You look beautiful, sweetheart," she said. "No matter what happens today, remember that Ryan chose you. Not his mother, not his family name, but you." Her words strengthened my resolve. Whatever Barbara had planned, I would face it with dignity. The ceremony was set in the gardens of the Philadelphia Country Club, with white chairs arranged in neat rows and an arch of white roses marking the altar. Through the window of the bridal suite, I could see guests arriving, taking their seats, admiring the elaborate floral arrangements that Barbara had insisted upon. Notably absent from the pre-ceremony preparations was Barbara herself. According to one of the bridesmaids, she had opted to get ready at home and would arrive just before the ceremony began. My maid of honor, Jess, pulled me aside as we prepared to line up for the processional. "There's a rumor going around," she whispered. "People are saying Barbara is planning something big." "What kind of something?" I asked, though I had my suspicions. Jess looked uncomfortable. "I don't know exactly. Ryan's cousin Ashley overheard Barbara on the phone saying she was going to expose the truth once and for all." I should have been terrified, but instead I felt oddly prepared. The envelope with the PI's photos was tucked securely into my bouquet, hidden among the stems of white roses and baby's breath. "Whatever happens, happens," I told Jess. "Today I'm marrying Ryan. That's all that matters." As if summoned by his name, a text from Ryan appeared on my phone. "Can't wait to see you. Whatever happens, know that I love you." The fact that he felt the need to include "whatever happens" suggested he also suspected his mother was planning something. But his declaration of love gave me courage. I texted back a simple heart emoji and handed my phone to Jess. The wedding coordinator signaled that it was time to begin. The string quartet began playing Pachelbel's Canon in D as the bridesmaids processed one by one down the aisle. Then it was my turn. My mother took my arm, gave me a reassuring squeeze, and we stepped into the sunlight. The garden was beautiful, with rose petals strewn along the white runner and gentle morning light filtering through the trees. At the end of the aisle stood Ryan, handsome in his tuxedo, his eyes lighting up as he saw me. Next to him, his father looked proud, if slightly anxious. I scanned the front row and saw Barbara, immaculate in pale blue, her expression unreadable. As I walked toward my future husband, I felt a strange mixture of joy and apprehension. The minister welcomed everyone and began the ceremony. Ryan and I exchanged smiles as the minister spoke about love, commitment, and the joining of two lives. Then came the moment. If anyone can show just cause why this couple cannot lawfully be joined together in matrimony, let them speak now or forever hold their peace. The traditional line was met with the expected silence. The minister was about to continue when the doors at the back of the garden burst open with a bang. Everyone turned. There stood Barbara clutching a small jewelry box, her face contorted with rage. But hadn't she just been sitting in the front row? I glanced back and saw that the seat was now empty. She must have slipped out during the opening remarks, preparing for this dramatic entrance. "Stop this wedding!" Barbara called out, her voice echoing across the stunned garden. She strode down the aisle, the same path I had walked just minutes before. "I cannot in good conscience allow my son to marry a thief," gasps rippled through the guests. Cameras that had been recording our happy day now captured this unfolding drama. Ryan stepped forward, his face a mask of mortification. "Mother, what are you doing?" he hissed. Barbara held up the jewelry box, now open to reveal its empty interior. "The Montgomery sapphire," she announced. "A priceless family heirloom missing since Madeline last saw it." She turned to face the guests. "I've tried to handle this privately. I've given her every opportunity to return what she stole, but she has refused to admit her guilt." Ryan's father stood up. "Barbara, that's enough. This is neither the time nor the place." "It's exactly the time," Barbara cut him off. "Before my son makes the biggest mistake of his life, everyone should know exactly who he's marrying." She turned back to me, her eyes cold with triumph. "I found the receipt, Madeline, in your purse during the bridal shower, from Carlisle Pawn on Front Street. Did you think no one would discover what you'd done?" The accusation hung in the air. Guests murmured among themselves, some looking at me with suspicion, others with pity. Ryan stood frozen, caught between his mother and his bride. I should have been devastated. I should have been in tears. But instead, as I looked at Barbara's smug expression, a strange sense of clarity washed over me. I saw her for what she truly was, not an intimidating society matron, but a deeply insecure woman, so afraid of losing her son that she would destroy his happiness to maintain control. And so I smiled. My smile clearly unnerved Barbara. She had expected tears, denials, perhaps even a confession. My calm demeanor was not part of her script. "You find this amusing?" she demanded. "Not amusing," I replied, my voice steady. "Just predictable." I turned to Ryan, whose expression had shifted from embarrassment to confusion. "Your mother has been planning this moment for weeks, Ryan. Maybe longer." Then I reached into my bouquet and pulled out the envelope I had hidden there. What I find interesting is that for someone so concerned about a missing necklace, your mother seems to know exactly where it is. I opened the envelope and extracted the photographs, holding them up for everyone to see. These were taken 4 days ago at First National Bank on Market Street. That's your mother entering the bank. That's your mother accessing a safe deposit box. And that, I held up the final photo, is your mother placing a blue velvet jewellery box inside that safe deposit box. The garden fell silent. All eyes turned to Barbara, whose face had drained of colour. "That's not... Those are fake," she stammered. "Photoshopped." She's trying to deflect from her own guilt. "They're genuine," I said calmly. "Taken by a licensed private investigator with timestamps and verification. I have the full report if anyone would like to see it." Ryan took the photos from me, examining them with increasing disbelief. "Mum, is this true? Did you hide the necklace yourself?" Barbara's composure cracked. "You don't understand. I was protecting you. She's not right for you, Ryan. She never was. I had to make you see that before it was too late." "By lying. By accusing her of theft." Ryan's voice rose with anger. "It worked with the others," Barbara blurted out, then immediately looked as if she regretted the words. "Others?" Ryan asked, his voice dangerously quiet. From among the wedding guests, a woman stood up. It was Rachel Peters, whom I had invited specifically for this moment. "She did the same thing to me, Ryan. Accused me of stealing earrings when we were dating. Your mother has been running this scam for years." Barbara looked around wildly like a cornered animal. "That's not I never... You've been sabotaging my relationships for years," Ryan said, the realization dawning in his eyes. "Any time I got close to someone you didn't approve of, you manufactured some crisis to drive them away." Barbara tried to reach for Ryan's arm, but he stepped back. "You needed someone from the right family with the right connections. These women were using you to climb socially. I was protecting our family name." "No," Ryan said firmly. "You were protecting your control over me, and I let you. I believed your lies about Rachel, about Diane, about all of them. I defended you to Madeline when she said you were being cruel. I made excuses for your behaviour for years." He turned to me, his eyes full of remorse. "I'm so sorry, Madeline. I should have seen this sooner." Barbara, seeing her son slipping away, made one last desperate attempt. "She's turned you against me, your own mother." "No, Barbara," I said quietly. "You did that all by yourself." Barbara attempted to storm out of the ceremony, but Ryan's father blocked her path. I had never seen Dr. Montgomery look so angry. "Sit down, Barbara," he said in a low voice that nonetheless carried in the stunned silence. "You've done enough damage for one day." "Richard, you can't possibly—" "Sit down!" His tone left no room for argument. To everyone's surprise, Barbara complied, sinking into a chair in the front row, her face a mask of thwarted rage. Ryan turned to face his mother. Years of pent-up frustration seemed to pour out of him. "Do you have any idea what you've done? Not just today, but for years. You've interfered in my life, manipulated me, driven away people I cared about. All because they didn't fit your narrow vision of who I should be with." Barbara lifted her chin defiantly. "I wanted what was best for you." "No," Ryan countered. "You wanted what was best for your social standing. There's a difference." He turned to the guests, many of whom were watching with undisguised fascination. "I apologize to everyone for this disruption, especially to Rachel." And he nodded toward his ex-girlfriend, "and any other woman my mother might have hurt with her schemes. But most of all, I apologize to Madeline, who has shown more grace and dignity today than anyone should have to." I stepped forward and took Ryan's hand, squeezing it in support. This was not how I had imagined our wedding day, but perhaps it was necessary, a lancing of a long, festering wound. "If it helps," I said to the guests, "we do have an actual reception planned after this. with an open bar. A ripple of nervous laughter spread through the crowd, breaking some of the tension. Ryan's father approached Barbara. "Where is the necklace, Barbara? The real one?" Barbara stared straight ahead. "In a safe deposit box at First National, box 247. We'll deal with that later," Dr. Montgomery said. He turned to Ryan. "Son, this is your wedding day. Don't let her ruin it completely." Ryan looked at me questioningly. "What do you want to do?" I thought for a moment. We could postpone reschedule for a time when this drama had faded. But that would be letting Barbara win, in a way allowing her actions to derail our plans. "I want to marry you," I said simply. "Today, now, if you still want to." Ryan's smile was like the sun breaking through clouds. More than anything. We turned back to the minister, who had been watching the proceedings with remarkable composure. "Shall we continue?" I asked. He nodded, adjusted his collar, and with admirable professionalism, picked up exactly where he had left off. The ceremony proceeded without further interruption. We exchanged vows that seemed to carry extra weight after what had just transpired. When Ryan promised to forsake all others, his gaze briefly flickered to his mother, and I understood he was making a deeper commitment than the traditional words suggested. As we were pronounced husband and wife, applause erupted from the guests, perhaps more enthusiastic than it might have been without the drama, as if they were celebrating not just our union, but our triumph over adversity. The reception that followed was a strange mixture of celebration and subdued conversation. Barbara left early, escorted by Dr. Montgomery. I noticed them having an intense discussion in a corner. Before they departed past his expression stern, hers defeated for the first time since I'd known her. Throughout the evening, guests approached to offer congratulations, tinged with curiosity. Some asked outright about the confrontation, others danced around the subject with meaningful looks and vague comments about unusual ceremonies. My college friends formed a protective circle around me, deflecting the more intrusive inquiries with good humor. Rachel Peters found me during the cocktail hour. "I'm sorry if my presence made things more dramatic," she said. "When you called, I never expected it would play out quite like this." "I'm glad you were here," I told her sincerely. "You helped expose a truth that needed to come out." She smiled sadly. For what it's worth, Ryan seems different now, more his own person. When we were dating, he would never have stood up to Barbara like that. As the night wound down, I found myself experiencing conflicting emotions. Vindication, certainly. Barbara's scheme had backfired spectacularly. Relief that the truth was finally out in the open. But also a profound sadness for Ryan, who had discovered such painful truths about his mother on what should have been a purely joyful day. When we finally departed amid a shower of rose petals, Ryan held me close in the back of the limousine. "I'm so sorry," he whispered against my hair, "about all of it." "It wasn't your fault," I assured him. "I should have seen it, should have protected you from her." I pulled back to look at him. "Maybe. But you stood up for me today when it mattered most. That's what I'll remember about our wedding day." He smiled, though his eyes remained troubled. "We have a lot to talk about, don't we?" "Yes," I agreed. "But not tonight. Tonight, let's just be newly married." As we drove away from the venue, I glanced back to see Dr. Montgomery standing alone, watching our departure. His expression was complicated. Sadness, resignation, and perhaps a glimmer of hope. He raised his hand in farewell, and I returned the gesture, wondering what conversations awaited the Montgomery household that night. Our honeymoon in Bali should have been a time of pure bliss, white sand beaches, crystal clear waters, luxurious accommodations. And while we did have moments of joy and connection, the shadow of Barbara's actions lingered over us. Ryan was processing years of manipulation, questioning every relationship that had ended due to his mother's interference. "How many potential relationships did she destroy?" he asked one night as we sat on our private terrace overlooking the ocean. "How many women did I hurt because I believed her lies?" I held his hand as he worked through his guilt. "You can't change the past. All you can do is acknowledge it and move forward differently." "I want to apologize to them," he said. "To Rachel, to Diane, to all of them. They deserved better from me." I nodded, understanding his need for atonement. "That might bring some healing, for them and for you." Ryan also grappled with what his relationship with Barbara would look like moving forward. "I can't just cut her out completely. She's still my mother," he said. "But I can't trust her either." "Trust can be rebuilt," I suggested cautiously, "if she's willing to do the work to truly acknowledge what she did and why it was wrong." "Do you think she's capable of that?" Ryan asked, genuine curiosity in his voice. I considered the question carefully. "I don't know. She's spent a lifetime believing her actions were justified. That kind of thinking doesn't change overnight. But people can surprise you. We returned from our honeymoon with a tentative plan. Ryan would maintain limited contact with his mother while establishing clear boundaries. He would seek therapy to process the complex emotions surrounding her betrayal. And we would approach any reconciliation with caution, requiring genuine change rather than mere apologies. Dr. Montgomery Richard, as he now insisted I call him, had been doing his own reckoning during our absence. He invited us to dinner shortly after our return at a neutral restaurant rather than the family home. "I've moved into the guest house," he informed us grimly. "Barbara and I are reassessing our relationship. Dad, I never meant to come between you and Mom," Ryan said, concern etching his features. Richard shook his head. "This isn't about you, son. It's about behavior I've overlooked for far too long. I knew Barbara could be controlling, status conscious, but I convinced myself it was harmless or that it was just her way of showing love. The incident at your wedding forced me to see the truth." He turned to me, his expression solemn. "Madeline, I owe you an apology. I should have intervened years ago when Barbara first started treating you poorly. My silence made me complicit." "You couldn't have known how far she would go," I offered. "Perhaps not," he conceded. "But I knew her character. I chose to look the other way because confronting her would have disrupted my comfortable life. That was cowardice on my part." His candor was surprising and somewhat disarming. In that moment, I saw where Ryan got his capacity for self-reflection and growth. Richard went on to tell us that he had insisted Barbara seek professional help. "I made it a condition of continuing our marriage," he explained. Surprisingly, she agreed. "She's been seeing Dr. Levinson twice a week." "Is it helping?" "Yes," Ryan asked cautiously. Richard's expression was guarded. "It's early days. She's resistant naturally. Decades of behavior patterns don't change easily, but there have been moments of insight, small acknowledgements. It's a start." He leaned forward, his gaze intense. "I want you both to know that while I hope for reconciliation, eventually I fully support whatever boundaries you need to set. Barbara's actions were inexcusable, and you have every right to protect yourselves. It was exactly what we needed to hear validation of our feelings, without pressure to forgive prematurely." In that moment, I felt a newfound respect for my father-in-law and a glimmer of hope that healing might be possible for this fractured family. In the weeks that followed, Ryan began individual therapy, working through the complex emotions surrounding his mother's betrayal. He also reached out to his ex-girlfriends, offering sincere apologies for believing Barbara's accusations against them. Some responded with gratitude, others with understandable wariness. Rachel, who had remained in occasional contact with me since the wedding, met with Ryan for coffee and later told me it had been a healing conversation for them both. As for Barbara, her journey was more complicated. Her first attempt at reconciliation came about a month after the wedding, an elaborate flower arrangement delivered to our new apartment with a card that read simply, "I'm sorry for the misunderstanding." Ryan sent the flowers back with a note of his own. "This wasn't a misunderstanding, it was a deliberate attempt to sabotage my happiness. When you're ready to acknowledge that we can talk." It was harsh, but necessary. Accepting a non-apology would only have enabled Barbara to avoid true accountability. 2 weeks later, Richard called to say that Barbara had asked if they could arrange a family therapy session. "She's nervous," he admitted, "but she says she wants to try." We agreed to one session with clear boundaries established beforehand. No accusations, no minimizing, just an honest attempt to understand each other's perspectives. It was tense and awkward, with Barbara clearly struggling to acknowledge the full extent of her actions. But it was a beginning. Over the next few months, we continued the family sessions alongside our individual therapy. Progress was slow and non-linear. Barbara would make breakthroughs, then retreat into defensiveness. She would acknowledge her controlling behavior, then justify it in the next breath. But gradually, painfully, she began to recognize the harm she had caused. "I was afraid," she admitted during a particularly emotional session 6 months after the wedding. "Afraid of losing my place in Ryan's life. Afraid of becoming irrelevant. Each woman he brought home, especially you, Madeline, seemed like a threat to my relationship with him. So I eliminated the threats. By lying," Ryan said quietly. "By manufacturing situations designed to make them look bad." Barbara nodded, tears in her eyes. "Yes, I told myself I was protecting you, but I was really protecting myself. My position, my control. It wasn't a complete transformation, Barbara's narcissistic tendencies remained her need for control, still evident in small ways. But she was trying, and for the first time, she was seeing herself with a clarity that made real change possible. The breakthrough came at a family dinner 1 year after our wedding. Barbara had invited us to the Montgomery home the first time we had been back since the wedding day confrontation. The atmosphere was tentatively cordial, with everyone making an effort to keep the conversation light and positive. After dessert, Barbara excused herself and returned carrying a familiar blue velvet box. My heart raced as she placed it on the table between us. "The Montgomery Sapphire, Ossa," she said, her voice tight with emotion. "It belongs to you, Madeline, as Ryan's wife, as part of this family." I stared at the box, remembering all the pain it represented. "Barbara, I don't know if I'm ready to—" "Please," she interrupted. "This isn't about the necklace. Not really. It's about acknowledging that you are a Montgomery now, whether I initially approved or not. It's about accepting that Ryan chose you and respecting that choice." She pushed the box toward me with trembling hands. "I use this necklace as a weapon. I'd like it to become a symbol of healing instead." I looked at Ryan, who nodded slightly, his eyes encouraging. Slowly I opened the box. The sapphire gleamed just as I remembered catching the light and refracting it in brilliant blue rays. "It's beautiful," I said honestly. "Yes," Barbara agreed, "and it's where it belongs now." It wasn't a perfect moment of reconciliation. There was still tension, still hurt that might never fully heal, but it was a genuine step forward, Barbara relinquishing a symbol of control, acknowledging my place in the family. As Ryan fastened the necklace around my neck, I caught Barbara's eye across the table. For the first time since I'd known her, her smile reached her eyes. Today marks 2 years since that chaotic wedding day. Ryan and I have built a life together that feels solid and genuinely happy. We've established healthy boundaries with Barbara, allowing her to be part of our lives, while making it clear that any manipulation or control will not be tolerated. Barbara continues her therapy, working to understand the root causes of her controlling behavior. Some days are better than others. She still occasionally slips into old patterns, a critical comment here, an attempt to manage our decisions there. But now when it happens, we address it directly rather than letting it fester. Richard has been an unexpected source of support throughout this journey. He moved back into the family home after 6 months of separation, but with a new dynamic in his marriage. No longer the passive enabler, he holds Barbara accountable while supporting her efforts to change. The most significant test of our new family dynamic came 3 months ago when Ryan and I announced my pregnancy. I was nervous about sharing the news with Barbara, afraid it might trigger her controlling tendencies once again. A grandchild would represent a new generation to influence a new relationship to potentially manipulate. But when we told her, Barbara surprised us. Instead of immediately taking over with plans and suggestions, she asked what we needed. Instead of declaring how things should be done, she listened to our ideas. And when she finally did make an offer to help decorate the nursery, it came as a question rather than a directive. "I found my old design books," she said tentatively. "If you'd like some input on the nursery, I'd be happy to share ideas, but it's completely your decision." It was a small thing perhaps, but it represented a monumental shift in how Barbara approached her relationship with us. She was learning to offer support without imposing control. Last week she brought over a gift, a handcrafted mobile, for the baby's crib made of delicate paper cranes that she had folded herself. "I read that origami helps with mindfulness," she explained. "My therapist suggested it. Each crane represents a wish for the baby and for our family." As I watched her hang it carefully over the crib, I reflected on the long, difficult journey that had brought us to this point. The pain of that wedding day confrontation had been necessary, a catalyst for change that might never have happened otherwise. By standing my ground, by refusing to be driven away by Barbara's schemes, I had not only preserved my relationship with Ryan, but had ultimately helped his family begin to heal long-standing dysfunctions. The Montgomery Sapphire now sits in my jewelry box, no longer a source of conflict, but simply a beautiful heirloom to be passed down. Perhaps one day I'll tell my child the story behind it, not to assign blame, but to illustrate how people can change when confronted with the truth of their actions. How families can heal even after the deepest wounds. How standing up for yourself can sometimes be the most loving thing you can do, not just for yourself, but for everyone involved. If there's one thing I've learned from this experience, it's that true strength isn't about never being hurt or never allowing yourself to be vulnerable. It's about having the courage to face difficult truths, to establish boundaries, and to offer forgiveness when it's earned rather than demanded. It's about knowing your own worth and refusing to let others define it for you. So if you're dealing with a difficult in-law situation or any relationship where someone is trying to diminish or control you, remember that you deserve respect. You deserve to be seen and valued for who you are. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply to stand your ground, even when it seems easier to retreat. Have you ever had to confront someone who was trying to undermine your relationship or your self-worth? How did you handle it? Share your story in the comments below. And if this video helped you feel less alone in your struggles with difficult family dynamics, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear this message. Remember, you are not alone and you are stronger than you know. Thank you for listening, and I wish you all the courage to stand your ground when it matters most.